Hello. Welcome back to Let's Talk H.P. Lovecraft. If you've not yet subscribed to our channel, please take a moment to do that now. Alright, here on Let's Talk Ray Bradbury, we are reviewing all the fiction of H.P. Lovecraft. Today we're looking at The Horror in the Museum, which he co-wrote with Hazel Heald in 1993. The way that these reviews work is that I give a brief synopsis of the plot of the story and then wrap up with sort of some thoughts and feelings about what the whole thing means. Is it a better or a worse Lovecraft story? So on to the synopsis. Stephen Jones, an artist, takes an interest in the grotesque wax sculptures of a man named Rogers at his museum in London. Some of the sculptures are of Lovecraftian monsters who you will know, but Rogers claims that they're not all in fact wax. Some of them are real. Through various discussions, late nights, Jones learns of Rogers' obsession with the occult. Roger claims to have traveled the world seeking out models for his work. He shows him a photograph allegedly taken in Alaska in some ruins of a 10-foot tall god monster from 3 million years ago that he says that he discovered there and then brought back with him. Because of Jones' disbelief, Rogers then challenged him to stay one night alone, locked into his museum. In the darkness that night, Jones's imagination plays tricks on him, but he tries to maintain his sanity in this creepy place surrounded by all these grotesque statues. But he's eventually attacked in the night by Rogers, who is wearing a costume of his own. He passes out briefly, but he wakes up and he finds that Rogers is dragging him through the museum towards his workroom, and then in the back of that workroom is a mysterious locked room. Rogers claims that the semi-aquatic god Rhan-Tegoth, who he brought back from Alaska, is behind the door in a pool, and that he is to be his next sacrifice to the god who needs to eat blood, and that it's a great honor for him, and he will immortalize him in wax later. Jones managed to subdue Rogers, thinking the man simply mad at this point, but then he hears splashing behind the door, and this sends him in sort of fits of fear. He runs out, checks into a hospital, eventually is released, and he's sort of toying with the idea that this has all been in his imagination. He never did really see the god. So weeks later, he returns to the museum. Rogers is not there. He meets his servant, Orobono. Orobono greets him and claims that Rogers is away in America on another assignment, another mission. But then he insists on showing him a statue of this god, his newest, biggest creation, which he says is behind locked doors because the police forced him to do it because it was causing patrons of the museum to faint. He shows him the creature, and he looks at its victim below its clawed feet, and he recognizes it as the face of Rogers. He still tells himself that, artists often do include some of their self into the work. However, he notices a scar on the face, and he remembers that in the tussle 2 weeks earlier on that night in the museum, he in fact scratched Rogers' face, and so he assumes that this all in fact happened. It wasn't just some weird, crazy, manic nightmare, and he presumes that Rogers is dead and that Orobono finished the sculpture, which is not a sculpture, and he's in fact looking at the real thing preserved in wax. All right, of these 2 volumes of Lovecraft collaborations and ghostwritten tales that I've read, I think this is one of the better ones. It's quite good. It reminds me a bit of the shorter Lovecraft story, Pickman's Model, where Pickman is this painter, and he's painting these grotesque ghouls that make everybody faint, and the one character who is interested in them goes to his studio and realizes that he has a gateway to another realm, and he's in fact sculpting these ghouls as he meets them. There is a smattering of Cthulhu mythos references thrown throughout the story, so it's very much connected in that way, rather loosely to the Cthulhu mythos. But at the same time, I would say the story actually works better because it feels more like a bit like Poe. It's driven by the intense building fear and suspense, but also this idea that maybe none of this was real. It works in that sense because Jones just thinks that Rogers is insane, and he thinks that he's helping him by disproving that his claims about the monster and all of that. So I quite like that. It's fairly artful the way that it's delivered, and as a reader, you don't really know how much is real and how much is in the character's imagination. And then at the end of the story, it's only slightly confirmed that all of it was real, and I think it's still left just vague enough up to interpretation that you could say that despite seeing Rogers with the scratch on his face, the cut on his face, you don't really know for sure whether the whole time Ouroboros, the servant, was in fact more deeply involved in all of this. And so there you have it. Whether you believe Rogers is in fact dead and this whole thing is real, or whether you believe that it was all within the imagination, it's a pretty damn good story that I liked, and I highly recommend it. Great title, too. The Horror in a Museum. That's a very vintage, classic, top-flight Lovecraft story name. But there you have it. Thank you for watching. I hope you're enjoying these reviews, enjoying these videos. Please subscribe. Next time we will discuss Out of the Aeon, another great title. I think there's a metal song or a band by that name too, isn't there? Anyhow, until next time, keep it creepy.